We all appear so separate.
Listening dissolves the fictions of separation.
Separate systems, yet we are one.
This is all fertile soil for us to literally compost.
There will come a time when we move from codependence to true independence and then interdependence.
Unbridled power, but it's power that can go in many directions.
There is an interconnection between mind and body, between science and spirituality, between self and other.
Create a fundamental shift in the way that we think and in the way that we feel and even the way that our cells talk to each other.
We must remove our materialism.
Remember that fundamental nature of our interconnectedness.
The type that has us believe we are separate.
Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
We are at a pivotal point in humanity's evolution. Our current climate crisis, health crisis, and social inequities reflect a great need for humanity to transform our way of acting, being, and thinking about the world. If we don't, we face real possibilities of greater suffering, even extinction. As heavy as that is, we have to look at the realities of where we are and what has gotten us here. This is from Dr. Shamini Jain's book, Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science, and the Future of Health. Shamini Jain, Ph.D., is a psychologist, scientist, and social entrepreneur. She is the founder and CEO of the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, CHI, a nonprofit collaborative accelerator that connects scientists, health practitioners, educators, and artists to help lead humanity to heal ourselves. Welcome, Shamini. It's wonderful to have you on 1111 Talk Radio.
It is so wonderful to be with you, Simran. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It is an extensive book. It's got wonderful research, a wonderful expression of the questions as well as various methods. And as I was reading through, I kept going back to the pandemic time because we seem to behave as separate systems in a lot of ways. In our healthcare, in government, in banking, whatever that is, we do have a certain level of separateness that's going on. And the pandemic, although it made us more separate, in many ways, it was pointing us to come back together by connecting us with ourselves. Whether individuals think that that was a manipulated event or whether that was a natural event doesn't matter. The end mission was to start pointing us back to ourselves.
I really love that you framed it with the pandemic. A lot of us called it the Great Pause. What I noticed for myself, and I think lots of us did, was the water got cleaner. We could notice the trees more. The animals started coming out. It became really quiet. It was such a beautiful time for us to remember that fundamental nature of our interconnectedness, not just human to human, but human to nature, that we're part of this giant big B biofield, which is the earth herself, Gaia herself, and our relationship with it. I think we all had this really felt sense during the pandemic that we were really part of something larger than just our little minds.
So there was this interconnection between the self, the isolated self, and then technology. In many ways, that's kind of the conversation when it comes to biofield. It's like we have to reconnect with this technology that we are to be able to really access other greater potentials that are there for individuals to enter into greater healing for themselves and others.
Some people would say, well, consciousness is really the fundamental. That's really where we need to start. But we do speak of mind and body because in, our Western world, those areas of focus have gotten the most attention, and they somehow just feel a little bit more reachable to us conceptually. Because when we talk about consciousness, it's like you could be talking about 80 million things depending on who you're talking to. But most of us have a sense of what we mean by mind, even if we don't agree on where mind comes from, and body. And this is really a great place to start because the ancients said this as well. They would say things like, the mind is a lame rider, and the vital force, or the body, is like a wild horse. So you have to put these things together because the body does its thing, right? And you can liken this to energy. Energy just does its thing. It's unbridled power, but it's power that can go in many directions. And the mind can help shape the energy and shape what the body does when we bring it to bodily awareness. But if we just stay in the mind, we're kind of just out in the amorphous field without any power. So when we connect mind and body, we're bringing focus and power together. And that's really powerful because that is really the critical foundation for healing. And then we get into more subtle aspects of it once the mind and body are really connected. And this is not conceptual, right? We do this with every breath. When we consciously breathe, for example, in our hearts, maybe we take a moment to do that now. We just take a nice inhale and we feel our breath in the body and we just notice where it is. We're beginning to center ourselves so that mind and body are connected and open the gateway for us to then notice the subtleties of that interaction. And that means the subtleties of the energy in and around our body, the opening to more spacious consciousness. So the entry point for all of us certainly is bringing that mind and body together. And I'll just say one thing about the science of it. You mentioned I share in my book. The field that I grew up in for my PhD work, psychoneuroimmunology, that field didn't even exist 50 or 60 years ago because we, in science, in Western materialist science, didn't understand that our emotions and our thoughts actually affected the body. In fact, 60 years ago, when doctors were telling scientists this, scientists laughed at them. Doctors were saying, I notice this pattern in my patients with certain health issues, like immune issues and whatever, that they all seem to have these similar patterns of certain types of difficult interactions with folks or mental emotional states. And the scientists were like, oh, that's a bunch of BS. There couldn't be any relationship. Well, they were wrong. And it took a dedicated group of scientists of many different disciplines, medicine, psychology, immunology, endocrinology, neuroscience, to come together and do the really careful experiments that showed us, wow, our mind and our emotions and our bodies are so connected, we can prevent disease, not even exacerbate disease with negative thoughts and emotions, which was the first thing that they wanted to uncover, because we always look at the negative first, that negative bias. Now we've done a lot more than that. We've shown that when we walk through the world honoring positive emotions and cultivating positive emotions and connections, we can actually stimulate health in our bodies. And of course, that starts with our consciousness.
There's such an interesting paradox here, and based on my own work in this field and my own healing journey, it would appear that all of these things are connected and are one. And yet we are having different parts. The body is an agency of itself. The mind is an entity unto itself. The spirit within us is that greater consciousness that's utilizing and partnering with these things. At least that's been my experience. And you brought up the word consciousness. That word can have many different meanings. It can have a small c meaning or a big C meaning. When you look at this field in regard to the ability to heal ourselves, can you create the distinction between that little c consciousness and that big C consciousness and how that relates to mind and body as we move forward in healing?
It's a great question, and it's a very important one. So what I'm sharing is just my perspective, and as you know, I talk about it more in the book, and I talk about different perspectives on consciousness besides my own here. Little c consciousness is the conditioned self. It is the conditioned mind. It is sense impressions translated into concepts, fed by our environments, the way we were brought up, the culture that we were grown up in, mental faculties that our brain helps support with our mind and our central nervous system, things like attention even. and awareness, sensory integration. Those are all parts of little c consciousness. All the beautiful things that we do to kind of walk and move into the world, and all the things that form our opinions and our belief systems and our habits, that's all little c consciousness. Big C consciousness is beyond the mind. If little c consciousness is sort of an outgrowth of the mind, big C consciousness is the container from which all things arise. It is the formless oneness from which the entire universe springs. In Sanatan Dharam, from our traditions in India, from the tantric traditions especially, sometimes we call this big C consciousness Shiva. And some folks know Shiva as a god, right? Depicted as a god in Hindu tradition. But Shiva also refers to a principle of formless oneness that is essentially our true nature. We describe this as Sat Chit Anand, ever omniscient, that is ever knowing, ever truthful, and ever blissful. This then begs the question, if we talk about big C consciousness, then what brings consciousness into form? And how does that relate to the biofield, which, as you know, is a big part of that book?
There has long been this separation between science and spirituality. And in recent years, we're starting to see those now merge. Is the biofield science that bridge not only between science and spirituality, but between mind, body, big C, and little c consciousness?
Yeah, beautifully put. Yes, to the Western mind and to the mind, there are many promises to biofield science. What is biofield science and what is the biofield? Biofield is a Western term that we scientists gave to try to understand the fields of energy and information that guide our health. It includes things that we can measure, like heart rate and skin conductance and brain waves, but it also includes subtle energy and subtle energy healing. It includes the way that we understand the flow of qi in acupuncture or Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. Those are all part of what we describe as the biofield in Western scientific terms. And the reason why I think biofield science is so exciting is the more we dive into these fields in energy and information, the more they're helping us understand the fundamental nature of our interconnection. That includes the fundamental interconnection of mind and body, of brain, of immune system, of hormone system, and how working with energy might actually link those systems together. But as you said, it also provides a perspective for us to understand how when we connect with what we call big C consciousness through our spiritual practice, through meditation, through prayer, through song, through dance, when we let go of our small selves, when we let go of just the conditioned mind and we tap into something greater, we start to really augment the healing response. And, this gets more into deep metaphysics, which I get into in the book. We talk about the fields like the koshas, for example, in the Indian traditions, that there are different levels of subtlety of who we are. Biofield science helps us understand that what we've called the energy body, or the fundamental vibrational nature of our being, helps translate shifts in big C consciousness that we might experience, whether it's through meditation, prayer, even psychedelics. Lots of people are experiencing it in different ways. How does that actually create a fundamental shift in the way that we think and in the way that we feel and even the way that our cells talk to each other? I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, some of the things that we're finding. We have to explore scientifically instead of just waving this away as like, oh, this is just woo-woo and energy healing is just woo-woo and acupuncture is woo-woo. That's not really true. The evidence doesn't support that. The evidence suggests that even when we work with energy without needles, without stretching, without cognitive restructuring, when we just work with energy, whether it's through self-practices like pranayama, energy work facilitated with us through an energy healing practice with someone working on us energetically, we see effects all the way down to cell signaling. We see effects now with mouse studies and cell studies even showing the reduction of the spread of cancer in the body in these very rigorous controlled trials with mice, for example, that's been happening at MD Anderson. So energy and working with the biofield, working with the vibrational nature of our being is having a fundamental effect on even the physical nature of our being, and certainly the spiritual, mental, and emotional nature as well. It's very, very exciting. So we can work in this bridge area. We can work with our energy every day. And that can foster the health within us, but it also fosters the health between us.
It's really important to have the awareness of how outwardly focused we are conditioned to be from the time we're children. That leads us then to be dependent on the external for everything. We start to believe that it is the medicine outside, or it is the teacher outside, or it is the something that is external to us that is the answer. There is a place for allopathic medicine. There's a place for everything to support us, but ultimately we have to remember that it begins with us. A paragraph that you have in your book where you talk about materialism, and it's a different look at materialism than many people may have thought about. And you say physicalism, a form of materialism, is a belief that we are essentially nothing more than our physical bodies, and that all medicine must be physical in order to have effects on treating disease symptoms. Pathogenesis, in a nutshell, is the study of disease and disease progression. And so with that said, you do go into this concept that we really have more of a sick care system than we focus on the actual ability to heal. There's a bridge that has to happen between that and then within us so that we connect to this biofield.
So the first thing we have to do is dispel the myth of separation, because the data doesn't support physicalism. It doesn't support the idea that only physical medicine can make me heal, for example. We have all these separate systems, okay? We're labeling these with our minds. We're labeling the immune system as the immune system. We're labeling the hormone system as the hormone system because it's just easier for us to literally wrap our minds around it, okay? But these are all just arbitrary fictions. And actually, the founder of psychoneuroimmunology, one of the founders, Bob Ader, said it himself. He said, disciplinary boundaries are biological fictions. We just create these separations and then try to put them back together again. It's a really wild thing. But when we look at the science, what we see is that we're just embedded ecosystems. We're part of a unified system. And so then when we look at health and healing, we realize that it's all about looking at the harmony or the lack thereof within these systems. We are walking systems of emotion, of spiritual experience, of mental facilities and faculties, of physicality, of social networks. And guess what? The science shows that all of those things are connected and matter for our health. So when we begin to realize that another person's happiness affects mine in ways that we can measure, that my physical environment will have an effect on my health, my connection with the trees around me will have effect on my health. My discussions and dialogues with my community have an effect on my health. My relationship with my divine nature or with the divine, however I experience and label that, has a profound effect on my health. Then we begin to wake up to this idea that, oh, I'm not this separate entity with this separate immune system that doesn't connect and doesn't feel things from others and doesn't feel the energy in the room, because fundamentally, intuitively, most of us all know it's just not true. How many times have you or someone you know said, oh, man, I walked in and I was just around this person who was so full of light and I walked away and I felt so much better. Or I walked into this business meeting and I walked out feeling really icky. What is that about? We feel energy. It's just about our matter of perspective. We describe this as looking at things in multiple fields of scale. So we can look at the physicality because we do have a beautiful physical body, and that body allows us to walk in the world and do things, realize our dreams and realize our dharma. So we look at the physicality and then we say, okay, we've got these muscles, we've got these tissues, we've got these organs, we've got these cells, but the cells are made up of molecules. The molecules are made up of atoms, the atoms are made up of quarks, and we can go all the way down to the quantum foam because we are also that. We are part of that primordial quantum soup. These are just levels of scale that we need to be aware of that comprise us. As we do get into those levels of subtlety, sometimes we're better able to feel those interconnections. If we just stay at the physical, and I believe that I am just this block of biomass, then I may not feel the interconnections with nature around me or, the animals around me. I may not even feel my own emotions as strongly if I just believe I'm physical and that disease is outside of me. It's much more disempowering to think like that. It's limiting, and it's based on a model of separation that's not really true.
These biofields that you discuss in your book, they are the field that's around us, but then they are also that field that's interacting with other people, with nature, with other things, with thoughts, with emotions, with energies. It's a huge field of energy that is constantly communicating.
Absolutely. And again, it's, levels of scale. We can look at the biofields of cells and we can measure them. And we do that by looking at cell-cell communication and looking at the electrical gradients between cells. We now know that cells talk to each other bioelectrically in different ways. Cancer cells have a different kind of electrical language between them than healthy cells. And we're learning how to actually work with the electrical gradients between cells to foster healthy communication. But we're also looking at the electrical communication between us. We see some really interesting things, including synchronizations of brain waves between people. And even now, the latest research that's just come out in high peer-reviewed scientific journals like Nature's Scientific Reports has begun even looking at the relationship of brain waves between healers and animals during the healing encounter, seeing evidence for brainwave synchronization between healer and healee.
Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science and the Future of Health by Dr. Shamini Jain. Find out more at shaminijain.com. We'll be right back after these messages. Do join my Substack. My publication is Beyond the Illusion, and you can find it at iamsimran1111.substack.com. That link is in the bio description. You'll actually receive all of the 1111 magazine issues on audio as part of that, in addition to the weekly prompt, inquiry, contemplation, and meditation that I provide to all of the subscribers on the annual membership. That link is in the bio description.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at iamsimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
I really enjoy working individually with people. If you're looking for some additional support and guidance, and you really want to dive into the subtle, then there are quite a few options on my website at iamsimran.com that have to do with shadow work or manifestation if you want a more focused approach on a particular thing, as well as individual sessions around deciphering signs, symbols, and synchronicities, gaining a better understanding of how the universe is speaking to you, your particular dialect. That link is in the bio description. Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science and the Future of Health by Dr. Shamini Jain. Find out more at shaminijain.com.
The latest research that's just come out in high peer-reviewed scientific journals has begun even looking at the relationship of brain waves between healers and animals during the healing encounter, seeing evidence for brainwave synchronization between healer and healee, even potentially human and cell. It's absolutely incredible because we can look at this and we can measure a lot of it in different ways. And I just want to say, Simran, that on the practical, because a lot of our listeners might be wondering, well, what about energy healing? Does that actually work? That's a way that we're working with energy. I want to let our readers know, and I detail a lot of this in my book, and I speak about very specific studies, including the really high level of rigor studies that are out there. If you're curious whether working with the field actually has a real effect on people, on patients, we have over 425 clinical trials of energy healing therapies, things like Reiki and therapeutic touch and healing touch and Jo Ray, and now some data coming up with pranic healing as well, and energy psychology practices, different kinds of tapping practices. And when we put that data together as a whole, we realize that over those 425 trials, we have at least 150 randomized controlled trials, which are still considered gold standard in research. That's a lively conversation we could have, but they're there. A lot of them have rigorous controls, including some placebo controls. And by and large, the data suggests that these are effective for things like pain, for anxiety, for mental health, including trauma. We've seen effects on epigenetic signaling. We've seen effects on normalizing hormone rhythms in fatigued breast cancer survivors. We've seen effects on preserving immune function in ovarian and cervical cancer patients who are actively going through treatments like chemoradiation. And like I mentioned, we're seeing cell and animal studies that are actually drilling down to understand the biological processes of how these energy therapies are getting under the skin and affecting the bioelectrical signaling that is preventing things like the spread of cancer in the body. So it is really real. And when we choose to look at the biofield level of scale, we're learning a lot about how when we work with vibration, we can foster healing.
When we look at all the data behind biofield healing alongside the ancient wisdom that explained the practices, purposes, and spiritual cores from which these healing methods came, it reminds us of two fundamental truths crucial to remember and act on in our lives. One, we are fundamentally interconnected, down to our consciousness affecting another's healing. Two, we are far more powerful as agents of healing than we can ever imagine. This is from Dr. Shamini Jain's book, Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science and the Future of Health. You spoke about the electricity that is in our bodies, and we do have electricity and magnetism. We are these beings that have the ability to absorb and emit energy, and that plays a role in how we can heal ourselves and heal others, in how we illuminate and radiate our power, or how we lessen that if we're not fully activating it. Can you talk about how our cells emit and are sensitive to these electrical potentials and how that plays into the biofield?
Yeah, but sometimes again, we just aren't taught to think of ourselves as vibrational beings, as electrical beings and magnetic beings, though we've all had that experience of someone's so-called magnetism, right? What is that about? Is that real? Well, our bones are piezoelectric. Our bones actually carry charge. Our cells communicate through electrical gradients. They, most likely carry information as well as transferring energy that allows for communication that make our bodies function. Even the water in our body is charged. So we just don't often think about it this way. In psychoneuroimmunology, we sometimes talk about chemotaxis, which is literally drawing different cells and different proteins to certain areas based on electrical charge gradients that will bring those specific molecules or proteins to the system to do things like facilitate immune repair or fight an infection. We just don't think about ourselves as bioelectromagnetic, but we are. We also know from research that we emit light. A fascinating study was actually just recently published in a very highly regarded journal demonstrating that there is a light charge that leaves the body when we die. Again, many healers have seen this, many death doulas have seen this, people have experienced it. What is that about? Each of our cells actually emit light. We call this biophotons. The mainstream research has shown us that we can look at the light emitted from cells and it can tell us about the state of oxidative stress in the body and even potentially distinguish cancer cells from regular cells. So this is all actually very mainstream science. We emit light, really likely emit sound as well. We haven't done a lot to really look at that yet, but we will. It's just a frame of reference for us to explore. What is that about? What does it mean? How do I feel that? Because a lot of folks, we haven't been trained to feel our energy. And so I remind people that there are some very fundamental ways to actually connect with your energy, feel your energy on a really practical level. It's what I teach in my workshops. I have a few of them coming up this year. There's one at Esalen in August called Free Your Energy, Transform Your Life. It's in mid-August. And we're going to actually be diving into not just the science, but how do we feel this? And how do we free our energy to be the joyful, healthy beings that we are meant to be?
The work that I do has a lot to do with emotions, with diving into the body, diving into a lot of what the shadow nature can actually show us. And my own deep dive has shown me that our brightest and purest light exists within our willingness to go into that space. For people that are suffering physically, talk about how profound the crisis points that show up in life, how we need to examine those also.
This is a wonderful direction. It's very practical for us, and it's necessary for us to talk about. I don't go as far as, say, some of our colleagues like Louise Hay has gone to suggest that every single physical issue that we might have in life is due to our emotional state. I do think emotions play a huge factor in our health. They can drive disease, and in some cases, they can actually stimulate a disease to happen. But let's just think about it this way. Cancer's in our body all the time. We have cancer cells flowing through our body all the time, but most of the time our body knows what to do to regulate it, to treat the cancer cells as part of an embedded ecosystem so that they don't just go off on their own, with unchecked growth. So we do know, for example, that ongoing chronic stress will exacerbate cancer. There's a lot of debate about whether stress causes cancer. We do know from the data that stress can exacerbate a cancer process. Chronic hostility and anger, whether held inwardly or expressed outwardly, will affect our heart, exacerbate the propensity for us to have heart disease, and it will exacerbate an already existing heart disease. We know that holding in our emotions will affect our lymphatic system. That can lead to all kinds of chronic inflammation issues. There's no question that our emotional well-being is tied to our physical health. And here's the good news. There are so many ways to work with our emotions, as you say, Simran, to uncover the gold, the golden nuggets in the discomfort that we are experiencing, the shadow nature that we might be carrying from our wounds, from our lineage, from the state of the world. This is all fertile soil for us to literally compost and bring to awareness what the situation is, what we are feeling, to go into the feeling instead of avoiding it, with the right support, I want to add. Because sometimes we have big feelings. Allowing ourselves to go into those big feelings, and I want to just say from an energetic perspective and an energy perspective, what happens is when we allow ourselves the space to hold our emotions with tenderness and realize the information that they're carrying, we come to these beautiful, profound realizations that might shift the way we do things, shift the way we interact in relationships, shift our habits, and open to a process of self-love that is so incredibly healing that whatever I am feeling, it's welcome. It's okay. And there's an energy release that literally happens from that frees us up, that keeps us from feeling bound to that stuck pattern that we don't want to be in, just by giving ourselves time and space first to feel. So important.
I often tell people you got to really embrace several of the archetypes for that holistic healing. And the visionary is that one that deals with the energy and can see something beyond what exists. And the mystic is the one that's willing to feel and go into the hidden. And then there is the healer. And as you were talking about the immune system, you have in the book that the immune system is far more a cooperative, interactive, and listening system than we first realized. To me, the healing aspect or archetype within us really is the great listener. Can you talk a little bit more about how listening plays a role with the biofield, with our interaction with it, and with us healing our own electromagnetic fields?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question. Listening dissolves the fictions of separation. Okay, I'm going to just say that again. Listening dissolves the fictions of separation, because when we listen, we're able to hear the whole of us. We're able to hear things that we might call intuition. We might be able to hear nature, even the trees around us and what they're saying. We can hear our inner thoughts. We can hear our emotions. We can hear what our bodies are trying to tell us because we're holding and listening a broader field. We're moving from little C consciousness toward big C consciousness. And when we expand the field, we're literally expanding the field. We're expanding the biofield. And when we do that, the sense of me as a separate, contracted, wounded entity begins to shift. It's not that I still don't feel sad or angry or any of that, but now I'm able to contain it through my listening. I'm able to watch it. I'm able to observe. I'm able to hold it in tenderness. And so in that way, I dissolve this idea that I am my pain, that I am my suffering, and I am a being who is holding suffering. I am a being that's holding anger. I can watch, I can learn, I can listen, and I can dissolve.
As you go into the final section of your book, you go into a lot of practices. I'm familiar with so many of the ones that you have mentioned. And what I've realized about all of those that I practiced is that they really are simply forms of listening, whether it's yoga, meditation, Reiki, any of the healing touch arts, all of it has to do with us listening at subtler and subtler levels. So ultimately, does true healing occur when we finally allow ourselves to listen to everything that is going on outside the noise that we keep paying attention to?
I just love that framing, Simran. I really do. Such a wise, wise observation. I'm in resonance with what you're saying. I'm absolutely in resonance with it. Listening literally opens us up to broader consciousness. And when we open up to broader consciousness, we heal.
You go into a great deal about the placebo effect and research that you've done, different studies that you have reviewed around that placebo effect. The body has a level of intelligence. So, where's the body's intelligence kicking in when there's that placebo effect? Or is our mind so strong that at times we can override the body?
That's such an excellent, excellent question. I do think that the body is an antenna. It's a large receptor for the fields of energy and information that continue to go through us, and the mind can act as a filter of that. So it is possible, and the data does show us that when we go into a situation not believing something can help us, we create that reality because we're blocking the fields of possibility that might actually foster the changes that we want to see, whether it's in our bodies or the world. This is really relevant to our world today. There are a lot of forces trying to remove hope, remove empathy, remove connection from our world. They're working primarily by creating discouragement and despondency in the mind. And unfortunately, what we know about the placebo and the nocebo effect is that when we walk into a situation with disbelief, this is never going to work. I'm never going to heal. We're never going to heal as a humanity. We're never going to get over this. We're never going to be able to fight tyranny. If we go in with that lack of hope, unfortunately, we contract the field of possibilities for what could happen for us. But the flip side is also true. When we move, and there's data, there's so much data behind this, and it's not just spontaneous remission data, which is very strong, but also just the healing data that I mentioned. When we go in with an open belief system, we may not even be like Pollyanna about it. It's going to work. It's going to work. I mean, I think it's always great to cheerlead and say it's going to work because you're going to shape the possibilities for that. But there's also this possibility of going in totally open, saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but here's what I want to happen. Here's what I envision for reality, for myself, for my family, for my community, for the world, for my cells. We're going to open the field of possibilities. And this is all demonstrated through research in the placebo effect. We set our minds to open expectations so that we are allowing for those fields of possibilities to exist.
And ultimately, we're here to remember that whether you call it God, source, universe, divine essence, courses through us. And so when approaching an energy healer, when approaching a modality, a protocol, even allopathic medicine, once we go in there, we have to understand that we are the ultimate healer, that no one's doing anything to us, that it is our own authority, that it is our own action, that it is our own belief system. How do we bring people to this place where they begin to see that biofield as that power of essence that they possess that can then create the very healing in their body that they're looking for?
It all really stems from having enough love for ourselves to engage in practices that bring us back to who we truly are. And the beauty is, and I talk about this in the book, there's so many practices. We just have to create a little time and space for ourselves. In the book, I give some guidance on how to create your healing ritual and the healing practice that you do for yourself, whether it's pranayama or breath work, parts of yoga like yoga asana, and of course, pranayama is part of the yoga path as well, formal meditation, spending time in nature, prayer, qigong, tai chi. All of these practices have shown us that we can develop our subtle awareness, deepen our relationship with our divine nature, and heal all the way down to our cells, reducing inflammation in the body as well as our mind. But we have to have enough love for ourselves to create space for us to engage in that coming back to ourselves on a regular basis.
You do lay out the practices in a really beautiful way, so I urge everyone to get the book and go through those practices, go through some of the very simple directions and associated chakras that she expresses throughout the book to help you understand how you can incorporate this into your life. Shamini, I love how you not only go into the mind, body, emotion, and energy, but you also point people to the importance of creativity and ritual, the part of life where we bring the sacredness back in. It's so easy to become casual, irreverent, to toss off what is valuable instead of really remembering that to find the sacredness within us, we have to cultivate environments and spaces and communications of sacredness. Can you speak to the creativity and the ritual and then grounding all of that in life?
In our traditions, again, from Vedic, Tantric, Sanatana Dharma traditions from India, the way we describe creativity is actually life force energy herself. We call it the big B biofield of Shakti with a capital S, the manifest power behind the entire universe that brings the formless into form. That energy of which we are comprised, every single living thing on this planet, and some would say living and non-living, that's another conversation, but every single thing, including us, exists through creative energy. We are creative energy and therefore creative by nature. So when we engage in creativity, we free our energy and we free our energy to spin off emotions that we no longer need, to shift our mental focus when we need to replenish, to revitalize, to ground, and to live in joy. And this is our birthright. We don't have to be professional artists. Every single one of us is creative. And it's just really finding that beautiful creative practice or flow that you enjoy, whether it's singing and dancing in your kitchen or taking a piece of paper and writing out something, whether it's prose or a poem or just your thoughts, whether it's just free drawing, whether it's making a meal or choosing your clothes for the day or even your makeup. There's so many ways for us to express our creativity. And what we need to realize is it's backed by data, but you will have that felt experience when you allow yourself to engage in creativity, that you are freeing yourself. You're freeing your emotional expression and you're freeing your energy. And it is bringing you back to your innate self, which is joy, which is bliss. That is the Anand. That is pure consciousness.
I think we live in a world where so many of us push against the current. We push against this place of presence that we are, and it happens unconsciously. It happens because we're focused on our phones. We're focused on something that's happening in the world. We're focused on a conflict that might be taking place. We're focused on something that we're creating or putting out into the world. I've discovered that when I do any of those things or other things, I'm placing myself outside of me, that it's so easy to leave the body. And I love how you end the book around surrender, because we must surrender back to this place where the current resides, which means pulling ourselves back once we've been on our phones for a while, pulling ourselves back after a radio interview, pulling ourselves back after going to lunch with a friend, and recentering back into that place so that we surrender that identity, that image, that person that we are portraying out in the world, and realigning to the big C consciousness. Speak a little bit about the surrender piece and how that has played out in your life as you've learned all of this around the biofield. Where is your bridge between science and spirituality?
Really, it's going back to deep listening, that this is a huge bridge, because as we allow ourselves to listen, it becomes easier to surrender, because we realize what we're surrendering to is our divine nature. And we're listening to the guidance that's supporting us to spiritually evolve and to make our lives better. So surrender is a huge process, because what we're really surrendering is what we think we know. And we're conditioned little C consciousnesses running around most of the time, like you said, facing phone, facing email, facing, do. Now I'm speaking of myself, but maybe others can resonate with this. It's like, oh, I got a million things to do before the next hour, busy, 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 do. And surrender allows us to actually drop into being through listening and saying, gee, I don't know. Like, I'm going to work for this because I believe in it, and I want to make it happen. I want to play my role, and I'm dedicated. This is part of my dharmic flow. I also don't really know how it's going to work out, and I can't get it too attached to the outcome, because it may not work out the way I think. It may not even work out the way I want. But often what I found in my life is when I really, really release that, and for me, that's part of a process of listening and saying, I don't know. Because, I was trained as an academic. As you know, Simran, I joke that I'm a recovering academic. Academics are taught to know, I know that. Well, no, we don't know anything. And actually, the scientific method is about not knowing. But the academic culture sometimes makes us feel like we know a lot more than we really do. So for me, it's been a process of unlearning and saying, I don't know. And I open to what comes next, knowing that I'm shaping the field with my desire. I am. I like if I want something, I'm not going to say I don't want it. I'm just going to say I notice I want this, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. And I'm open to the possibilities of what needs to happen for my spiritual evolution. And then really cool things happen when you do that, And that's kind of how things have happened for me. That, and I would say part of the surrender that I think we need to be reminded of, that has certainly played a role for me, even in a way kind of unconsciously, is following my bliss and following my passions. That's what got me into the whole field. Everybody says, how did you get into this? What's the formula or whatever? There is no formula in my view. I mean, I'm sure there is a formula. Somebody could probably give it. Maybe it'd be a lot less work. But for me, it was just sort of following my bliss. It was following my curiosity and my bliss and really surrendering to that, saying, wow, I don't know where this is going to lead, but this is where I'm feeling like this rise up in me. This is what I want to do. It's not even where I want to serve. It's what lights me up, what gets me excited, what makes me feel like, wow, this is just really where I want to spend my energy and time. And typically when we do that, when we say we light up around something where we want to spend our energy and time, we realize that we're actually being in service. So we don't have to create this whole heavy overlay about how we're going to be in service. I guarantee you that if you follow your creative outlets and your nature of your passions, if you just follow that flow, you will be in service. You will be in your dharma. You will be in surrender, because you're in flow.
Follow your bliss. That's all you need to do to strengthen that electromagnetic field around you and energize it. And then allow the healing, allow the surrender. Work on the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, and the spiritual, and get to know more of who you are. As the Jain nun told Dr. Shamini Jain, at the beginning of her journey, healing starts first with each of us. In order for us to truly understand the mysteries and realities of healing, we must embark on the healing journey ourselves. The best way we can foster healing for others is to ensure that we are also making ourselves whole. Once again, the book is Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science, and the Future of Health. Her website, shaminijan.com. Definitely find out more about the groundbreaking film on energetic and spiritual healing that she is involved with and sponsoring through her organization, Consciousness and Healing Initiative, and 3-1 Creative Productions. That is the healing energy that heals.com. And join Dr. Jain with her nonprofit, Consciousness and Healing Initiative, for monthly Free Friday online dialogues with leading lights on healing, and that's webinarsonhealing.com. Dr. Jain is an international keynote speaker and teacher. She integrates her background in clinical psychology psychoneuroimmunology, Jain's spiritual wisdom, and the healing arts in order to teach people how they can best heal themselves and live life with joy and spiritual alignment on purpose. Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science and the Future of Health by Dr. Shamini Jain. Find out more at shaminijain.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Shamini, for being on 1111 Talk Radio. I really enjoy working individually with people. If you're looking for some additional support and guidance, and you really want to dive into the subtle, then there are quite a few options on my website at IamSimran.com that have to do with shadow work or manifestation if you want a more focused approach on a particular thing, as well as individual sessions around deciphering signs, symbols, and synchronicities, gaining a better understanding of how the universe is speaking to you, your particular dialect. That link is in the bio description. Thank you so much for spending time. Until next week, I am Simran, in love, of love, with love and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living. You are not on the journey. You are the journey.